The air around Buckingham Palace seemed heavier than usual that morning. Crowds gathered in silence, waiting, though none could have predicted the shock that was about to ripple across the world. Inside, Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, prepared for the most life-altering decision of their lives. Not a scandal, not a ceremony, but a farewell that would bring an entire nation to tears. This wasn't just the end of a chapter, it was the rewriting of royal history. And when the couple finally stepped forward, hearts trembled everywhere. Before we step deeper into this extraordinary story of courage, love, and sacrifice, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss our most emotional royal moments. And if this story touches you, share it with a friend who still believes in the power of love over duty. Your support helps us keep bringing these heartfelt stories to life. Now let's journey together into William and Kate's unforgettable final bow. The golden light of dawn slipped quietly across Buckingham Palace, but inside there was no calm. The palace's usual rhythm, the footsteps of staff, the murmur of duty, felt strangely heavy, as though even the walls themselves knew what was about to unfold. Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood before her mirror. Her hands trembled as she adjusted a simple navy dress, an outfit that within hours would be etched into history books. It wasn't the kind of trembling born of nerves before a public appearance. She'd faced thousands of those. This was different. This was the weight of a final bow. Behind her, the door opened quietly. William stepped in, his stride slower than usual, his eyes carrying the burden of centuries. He rested his hands gently on Kate's shoulders, their reflections meeting in the mirror. His voice, soft yet edged with resolve, broke the silence. "Are you sure, darling? Once we walk through those doors, there's no going back." Kate turned, locking eyes with the man who had been her anchor through storms of duty and scrutiny. She whispered back with a steady certainty that only love could give. "We've talked about this for months, William. Our children deserve a normal life, and so do we." The decision hadn't come overnight. It had been building like a storm on the horizon. Each official engagement, each intrusion by the press, each moment stolen from George, Charlotte, and Louis. Their babies were no longer theirs alone. They had become public property, their childhoods packaged for headlines. For William and Kate, the thought had grown unbearable. Down the corridors, palace staff moved quickly. They had been briefed just hours earlier that something significant was about to happen. Phones buzzed, statements were drafted, security was tightened. The king himself had only just been told. Charles's reaction had been sharp, laced with disappointment and fear. "You're throwing away 1,000 years of history," he had warned his son. But William had stood firm. "Father, with respect, this is exactly about us. About Kate, about the children, about living a life we choose." In her room, Kate clutched a framed photograph from a family holiday. No flashing cameras, no protocols. Just George's laughter, Charlotte's cheeky grin, and Louis's tiny hand gripping hers. That picture wasn't just a memory. It was the future they were fighting for. And so, as they walked together through the palace corridors hand in hand, staff lined their path. Some wept openly, others nodded quietly, understanding all too well what this moment meant. They had watched William grow from a boy who lost his mother into a man determined not to let history repeat itself. They had seen Kate blossom from a shy newcomer into one of the most beloved women in Britain. Outside, the crowds were already gathering. Rumors swirled like wildfire. Was it another royal baby? A new project? No one imagined the truth. As William and Kate reached the great doors, his hand found hers. They looked at each other, a silent vow passing between them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And with that, the morning of goodbye had begun.
The heavy oak doors creaked open, and a blinding wall of camera flashes greeted William and Kate. For a moment, the room froze in stunned silence. Every royal correspondent, every photographer, every live broadcast feed, waiting for a story none of them could yet imagine. William stepped to the podium, his wife by his side, her chin lifted with quiet dignity. He cleared his throat. The sound seemed louder than it should have, echoing across centuries of tradition. And then, with steady resolve, he spoke words that would reverberate around the world. Catherine and I have made the difficult decision to step back from our roles as senior working members of the royal family. The room erupted. Questions were shouted. Pens scratched furiously across notepads. Camera bulbs flared like lightning. Security shifted forward, but William raised a hand, commanding calm. His voice cut through the chaos, firm yet filled with raw emotion. This decision has not been made lightly. It comes from our hearts, from our deep love for our children, from our desire to give them something that no crown, no duty could ever provide: freedom. At his side, Catherine stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. Our children deserve to grow up as children, not as public figures. They deserve birthday parties without photographers, friendships formed without titles, and the chance to make mistakes without the world watching. Her words landed like a hammer blow. Even seasoned royal reporters sat wide-eyed, stunned into silence. Across the palace, phones rang endlessly. Senior courtiers scrambled to contain the fallout. In living rooms across Britain, teacups dropped, television sets blared breaking news banners, and families stared at their screens in disbelief. Inside the briefing room, William abandoned his prepared notes. He spoke now not as a prince, but as a husband and father. People will say we are giving up privilege, but we are not giving up anything. We are choosing something. We are choosing each other. We are choosing our children's future. And we are choosing to write our own story. The floodgates opened. Questions came rapid fire. Where will you live? Will you keep your titles? What does the king think? William and Kate answered calmly, every detail meticulously considered. A private residence away from London, independent careers, his work in conservation, her return to early childhood initiatives. No royal allowance, no taxpayer funding. Every sacrifice weighed, every consequence understood. But perhaps the most powerful moment came not from their words, but from their faces. The emotion was unmistakable. Kate's eyes shimmered with tears she refused to let fall. William's voice broke only once, when he said, "We are gaining the right to be parents first." Outside, the crowds gasped as word spread. Online, hashtags exploded. #RoyalExit, #StandByWilliam, #FamilyFirst. Supporters praised their courage. Critics called it betrayal. The nation was split. But in that room, with the cameras flashing and the world holding its breath, William and Kate had done the unthinkable. They had chosen love over legacy, and the monarchy would never be the same again. While the world digested William and Kate's announcement, Buckingham Palace itself was in turmoil. Behind its gilded walls, the atmosphere was tense, almost electric. Staff who had served generations of monarchs now whispered in corridors, unsure whether they were watching history or witnessing the monarchy's unraveling. King Charles paced the length of his study, his normally composed face tight with strain. The red dispatch boxes, always stacked neatly on his desk, lay unopened. His voice was low, almost broken, when he muttered Camilla. His throwing away everything. 1,000 years of history. For what? A dream of normality that doesn't exist for us. Camilla said little. Sometimes silence was her greatest support. But in her eyes, there was something softer, a recognition of the pain William carried, the same pain his mother, Diana, had once lived with. Elsewhere in the palace, Princess and was blunt as ever during a secure call with her brother. "The boy's got spine," she said. "Can't fault him for wanting out. But the timing, well, it couldn't be worse." She wasn't wrong. The monarchy was still recovering from Harry and Meghan's departure. Republican sentiment was rising in Commonwealth nations. Now William, the future king, had stepped aside. It was a thunderclap the institution hadn't prepared for. And then there was a queen. Elizabeth, frail but sharp-eyed in her 90s, received the news with her trademark stoicism. Those closest to her later revealed her private words. "I always knew he was like Diana. Perhaps that is his strength, and perhaps it is his weakness." Meanwhile, Kate and William weren't untouched by the chaos. At Kensington Palace, their emotions shifted between relief and sorrow. Catherine spent quiet moments in George's room, studying the photographs on his wall, official portraits besides snapshots from holidays. Soon, she knew, the balance would tilt. There would be fewer gilded frames and more muddy football games, fewer photographers and more playground laughter. But even amid their conviction, the weight of what they were leaving behind pressed heavily. Staff who had been with them for years broke down in tears. Security officers, hardened by duty, struggled to hide their emotion. One whispered to a colleague, "They are good people, better than most. If they believe this is right for their kids, I can't blame them." Yet the wider world wasn't as forgiving. Politicians debated succession. Legal experts argued about constitutional implications. News anchors speculated wildly about Britain's future. Some called it a betrayal. Others hailed it as bravery. The monarchy itself, was it now fractured beyond repair? That night, William phoned Harry in California. For years, their relationship had been strained. But in this moment, the distance melted. Harry's voice carried empathy. "I never wanted this for you, but maybe I understand better than anyone why you're doing it." William's reply was simple, heartfelt. "Maybe you showed us the way." Inside palace walls, the old order trembled. But inside their hearts, William and Kate felt something new, resolve. They had stepped into uncharted waters, and the waves they created would carry far beyond Britain. 3 weeks after the announcement, the morning of departure arrived. A grey mist clung to Kensington Palace, as if the weather itself shared the family's sorrow. Moving trucks lined the courtyard, discreet yet impossible to ignore. For William and Kate, this wasn't just a house move. It was a severing from a life they had once believed was their destiny. Inside, Catherine walked through familiar rooms, each corner heavy with memories. In the nursery, she paused at the window where she had once rocked George as a baby, staring out into the garden for comfort during sleepless nights. Now, with tears streaming, she whispered to William, "It's harder than I thought." He pulled her close, his own voice shaking. "We're not just leaving a house. We're leaving everything we thought our lives would be." That morning, their children had said tender goodbyes to staff who had become like family. George handed the housekeeper a drawing of the palace. Charlotte picked flowers for the security guard she adored, and little Louis asked innocently, "Are we going on holiday?" Hearts broke all around them. Even the toughest protection officers blinked back tears. But the hardest farewell was yet to come. King Charles had requested a private meeting with William. In Buckingham Palace's blue drawing room, father and son faced each other across centuries of history. The king's eyes looked older than his years, filled with both love and fear. "I've been thinking," Charles began slowly, "about what you said, duty versus happiness, and what children should have. Perhaps I focused too much on the institution and not enough on the people within it." William listened quietly as his father's voice cracked. "Despite my disappointment, despite my fears for the monarchy, I am proud of you. It takes courage to walk away from certainty, even when that certainty is a cage." The two embraced, father and son, king and heir, bound by love even as tradition slipped away. Before leaving, William visited his grandmother. The queen, frail yet unyielding, sat in her favorite chair. She reached into a wooden box and handed him a silver locket. Inside was a photo of Diana laughing, free from duty shadow. "She would understand," the queen whispered. "She would be proud. Follow your heart." Back at Kensington, the family gathered for one last moment inside the grand entrance hall. Staff lined up, fighting tears. Catherine's voice echoed softly, "Thank you for treating us like family, not just royals." The butler, who had served them since their wedding, finally dropped the formalities. "William, Catherine, it has been the greatest honor. We wish you every happiness." As they stepped outside, cameras roared. Flashes blinded. Shouts filled the air. But this time, William and Kate didn't stop to wave. They walked directly to their car, their children at their sides. George looked back one last time. "Will we ever come back, Papa?" he asked. William knelt, meeting his son's eyes. "Perhaps to visit, but this will no longer be our home." The doors closed. The car pulled away. And with it, the Cambridge family left behind centuries of tradition, carrying only the promise of a life freely chosen. The countryside of Norfolk greeted the family with a quiet unlike anything they had ever known. No palace gates, no reporters waiting outside, just the sound of wind rustling through trees and the laughter of children running across grass still wet with morning dew. Their new home was modest compared to Kensington Palace, a converted farmhouse with creaking floors and draughty windows. Yet it radiated something the palace never could: warmth. In the kitchen, Catherine dusted her apron with flour as she helped Charlotte bake cookies, giggling when eggshells accidentally slipped into the bowl. "This is messy," Charlotte teased. "That's what kitchens are for, sweetheart," Kate replied, smiling at the kind of imperfection she had once been forbidden to show. William returned from his new job at a conservation center, boots muddy, face tired but happier than he'd been in years. The salary was modest, the hours long, but the fulfillment was priceless. "How are my favorite bakers?" he asked, kissing Kate's cheek and ruffling Charlotte's hair. George, meanwhile, was preparing for his first real birthday party. No guest list approved by Cortez, no photographers, just classmates, balloons, and a bouncy castle. "This is my first proper party," he whispered excitedly to his mother. Her heart swelled, and broke a little too. The transition hadn't been easy. For months, paparazzi camped near their new home. Cameras lurked at school gates. But gradually, the frenzy faded. Britain's attention moved on, and William and Kate's refusal to play the media game won them a measure of respect. Slowly, their children's laughter replaced the sound of camera shutters. Charlotte thrived in her new school, starring in her drama club play. George discovered dinosaurs and mischief in equal measure. Louis, too young to remember palace life, grew up splashing in mud puddles, blissfully unaware of what he had left behind. At night, William and Kate often sat on their small patio, watching the children chase fireflies. Sometimes, William would ask, "Do you regret it?" Kate always thought carefully before replying. "I regret the pain it caused your father, the Queen. But I don't regret this, choosing happiness, choosing family." Public opinion had softened. Polls showed growing support for their decision, parents everywhere admiring their courage. Even Harry reached out, their fractured brotherhood slowly mending over shared choices and shared scars. One evening, as the sun dipped low, George asked his father, "Will I still be a prince?" William knelt, looking him in the eye. "You'll always be you first, George. The rest will be for you to decide." In that moment, William and Catherine knew they hadn't walked away. They had walked toward something richer, something real. For the first time in their lives, tomorrow belonged entirely to them. And so, the story of William and Catherine's final beau was not the end of fairy tale, but the beginning of something more powerful, real life. They traded crowns for freedom, palaces for privacy, and duty for the right to be parents first. Their choice rippled across the world, dividing opinions, stirring debate, even shaking the monarchy itself. But beyond the noise, beyond the headlines, one truth stood unshaken. They chose love. And sometimes that is the bravest choice of all. As they tucked their children into bed each night, surrounded not by golden ceilings but by love and laughter, William and Kate discovered what countless families already know, that the greatest kingdom of all is the one built inside your own home. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because stories of love, courage, and family deserve to be remembered.